Hey there, everybody, and Happy New Year's. It's a whole new year, it's a whole new show. This is the film business finishing off its first season. We're going to be going for a little bit longer into the year, and then it'll end. And, depending on how this thing goes, we'll possibly extend into season 2. So we'll see kind of how things happen from now on. But this is a very special episode. So we're going to start off the new year with a bang, something a little bit different than what we did last year. It's still an educational show. It's still out there for filmmakers, anybody interested in the actual film business, but it's kind of now going to take on a little bit of a different tone and element, as I'm sure you can kind of already tell, just a little bit. So we still got the awesome background. Can't miss out on that. So that is part of the film business, right? But yes, it is kind of a little bit of a new show. We're going to be experimenting with some things. So if you like it, let us know. If you don't like it, let us know too. There's a whole comment section for a reason. So like and subscribe, and please support us at dangerdogproductions as we go forward with this entire show. So without further ado, Happy New Year's episode. We have the Terminal List. Now, what are we talking about the Terminal List, and why are we talking about the Terminal List? Well, besides, Chris Pratt being Chris Pratty, he looks super good. Call him Daddy. Oh, Jesus. The show is something that I have deemed really, really educational for its lighting and its coloring. Now, just to give a little bit about the show, if you haven't seen it, the show is basically following a Navy SEAL that his entire team gets betrayed by the U.S. government. They end up getting killed off, and he has to kind of follow them in this espionage thriller, action-packed hunt to figure out why his team and his family was slaughtered, and that it was the government, and how to kind of get revenge on them. So it's a whole revenge story that's very, very intense, and it's deep, and it's personal, and it has a lot of power that, of course, the original author, Jack Carr, who wrote this thing, he did such a phenomenal job. But the story itself transferred over, and under Chris Pratt, it just was gold. So that being the story, here's what we're talking about. With the lighting and the elements of lighting and coloring. When you color your film, or when you light your film, especially when it comes to the tone and the setting and the feeling of the scene that you're trying to play out, depending on the story, depending on how it goes, you want to really keep in mind the lighting and the coloring. So these are both something you should understand in pre-production and something that you should be following the entire time. But what I'm going to describe now are going to be the actual uses that you can put it to. So what this is it's going to be, you can create a tone and a setting and a flow for a entire film using multiple sources of coloring, multiple sources of lighting, but keeping them in the same kind of lighting and coloring family. You can darken a feeling throughout the entire movie and really bring your audience on a ride that they subconsciously get thrown into. So what I mean by this is when you start a film off in kind of a bright, happy, cheery kind of tone, and then gradually, as each scene progresses, darkens it until we can return to it in the end, or maybe we don't return to it. Maybe that's just kind of how the world ends up. That's one of the easiest explanation I can bring it. With the Terminal List, how this did it is it did this on multiple different levels throughout multiple different characters. We're going to go into all of that, okay? The basic tone, of course, is set with this kind of espionage, realistic, graphic, dark demeanor. The darkness and the shadows that are played with this is very noir-esque, especially when it comes to the sit-down meetings with the higher-ups, when it comes to these kind of, interactions with people in these isolated areas to make you feel like they're hiding something, or they're trying to tell you something, or they're trying to say something and expose something that they shouldn't probably be doing at the time then. So the way this is described best when you're watching the show is when he's sitting in the Admiral's office and he's getting chewed out, right? All three characters in the very first one, episode 1, all three characters have a certain shadow that casts on the left side of their face, all right? The right side of their face is illuminated except for the Admiral, his is on the left. Now, the reason behind one of these things and what you could do with this, the filmmakers, they might have their own reason, but as far as, us as filmmakers ourselves, or us as film cinephiles, us as people that enjoy the movie, we can always kind of bring something out of it that we see. And what I saw in this was that each one of them had something to hide, right? They were all on the same level in an essence, but they all kind of had this darkness that was within. Now, of course, with James Reese, the main character, he's hiding something where he doesn't know if he can trust them. right? And that's kind of shown on throughout the entire show, but that's what he's feeling right at that moment is, can I trust you? Should I say this, or can I even trust myself? What's going on? When you have the other guy beside him, forgive me, I forgot his name. And you have the other guy beside him, he's hiding, his involvement in the situation. And then, of course, when you go to the Admiral, he's hiding his true feelings. He has to put on a face, put on a facade. Now, when you're a filmmaker, you can use these senses of harsh lighting to create these elements. When you have an element like this, what would be your initial thought? Mine was two-faced. That's where I came to the conclusion that they were hiding something. There's two people in the same space. There's two persons that are fighting for the same space. They're trying to show what's really going on. So you can use that kind of element that's really direct and on the nose to expose how your character's feeling. You can also make it more subtle to where maybe it is shown from the back of their head, and that's where you kind of see the lighting shift. And you can even do a thing where as you're coming forward, maybe you're dollying forward or you're trucking right, you can have the shadows change along them to show a progression throughout the lighting. Maybe the transfer changes. This has been something that I've seen done in a lot of different movies, but especially Wrath of Man. Right? Wrath of Man. Something like that. It was, oh my God, Jason Statham. And it was a movie, Wrath of Man, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. It had a lot of these things where you would see the shadow shift around the entire being. At one point, it was dark shadow in the front. At one point, it's dark shadow in the back. It's dark shadow on one half. It's on the side. It's these different elements that you can use to bring out a certain character or show you a certain character's state of mind. So having the darkness in the front is all-consuming. It's all that you see. So placing that in front of them would be a really cool way to expose that feeling without necessarily having to speak it. So with the lighting, and as it progresses through the terminal list, you're going to watch a lot of different setups, and they're really, really unique. Now, the most basic one, generic one, right, is the super realistic and bright open spaces where everybody's kind of on the same level. And you think, well, if I'm trying to stylize a film, I can't use that at all. I need to be stylistic. I need to have heavy shadows. I need to have very light shadows. But as you know, in this kind of sense, no, it's bullshit. You can use simplicity and realism to separate and give your audience a chance to breathe. Your audience lives in that world. Most of your audience doesn't understand the things that I just brought out. They don't pay attention to it. They sit down, they watch a movie, they enjoy the movie. That's it. Well, us, us psychopaths, cinephile psychopaths, we love to push the boundaries and really try to figure out, why is this color here? What is that? What's the yellow balloon falling in the back of Reservoir Dogs? All these different questions that give us hard-ons and all that shit. But the average audience member is going to do that. So what is the best way to keep them engaged? Is to show them something they recognize. What is a way that you can add it to the story element? Terminallist did this perfectly. When he was being hunted by Navy SEALs and by soldiers, they changed the dynamic to where it wasn't nearly as dark. It was more of a realistic sense. That was because they were both on the same level, right? Now, I just brought that up and explained that. Now, that's in the center of pretty much the entire show, all right? So now we got to backtrack to expose to you what the other differences were, right? Well, the other differences were, when you started the show, it was extremely dark, extremely harsh, and it was one of those where the world was an envelope of shadows and chaos, right? From the very beginning as they entered, it was a dark space. It was something that was, kind of foreign to everybody else. This is the first tunnel that we've been in that looks like this, right? Or whatever, this is going on, the terms used. But this is how we feel as we enter, is that we are inside this dark space with them. And as it erupts, you don't know which way is left, which way is right. It really exposed the true feelings of what is like being a Navy SEAL in the middle of combat, in the middle of trying to save your men and rescue your men. Now, from there, we'll move into the real life, the real world. This is post the attack, post all of his men dying. You go into a sense of darkness, a sense of sheer just despair with him as he's trying to deal with and cope with the loss of his soldiers, the loss of his brothers, the loss of those men that were under his command. So the world is dark, and the world is something that is showing itself in a two-faced manner. This is where we saw the Admiral scene, where we saw the two-faced. This is where we kind of notice in the bar how all the other elements are super, super dark, and as somebody comes up, yes, she stands out from the background, but the background does fade into complete kind of non-existence, and then even has a moment of questioning, was that actually real? Did he actually go through that? This is all placed on the lighting of making it more cinematic, making it feel more like a spotlight was on the image, a spotlight was on this scene in this moment. And then changing it later on and making it more realistic does put in that effect of, is it real? Did it really happen? This is something you can use to your advantage as well. Make your scenes that you want to look super cinematic and super intense and memorable. Super intense and memorable. There's other films that we'll be discussing as we go on, and I'll go into even more depth in how this works. I'm really excited too. But in this one, there are elements that you use to play the tricks on the audience. You're trying to make them question, is this real? Is he really remembering everything right? Is he going through, is him PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder? What's going on? But it's not a question of, what the fuck's going on? It's more of a question of, oh, what's going on? Like, is this real? As that progressed, then you start to see the effects that go on and deeper into his analysis and his life. Now, this starts to invade his memories and his dreams. They start out kind of bright and cheery and upbeat, and then they slowly too get corrupted. And this is his elements with his daughter and his wife. They really pull and start to pull these blue hues and these kind of darkish browns, and it just kind of simmers the colors down and makes them a little bit more muddy and dark. And that's what kind of represents the very first scene, which was super muddy and dark. And it kind of exposes that coloring and that lighting is spreading throughout the rest of the story. Now, a really, really cool, significant thing that I noticed in the terminal list was the journalist. And when the journalist went out to the beach to stay at her brother's house and kind of get away from everything, the colors kind of stayed the same, which exposed that the world was also being affected by this black hole that Reese was becoming. In the shootout scene, when he went after the cartel, notice how dark everything was, and notice how much it resembled, even though it's outdoors, resembled the very first scene, but it was a different level. It was a controlled chaos that he now moved through with ease. This is something that you can really expose by bringing that character into darkness and everybody else being eliminated by it. Now, this is absolutely perfectly executed in Terminalist. He had become the shadows. He was one with the darkness and had allowed himself to really push and be that creature. And that was shown in the scene when he gutted the guy at the very end of that conflict. Notice how dark he was. Notice when the light shone on it, hit that Two-Face, and then it took over at moments. I mean, he became this creature, and as the lighting portrays, you can change your character and get them used to seeing multiple faces on the same person. This is where you can subliminally and subconsciously make someone believe that now another person has shown up. Now somebody else has arrived. And this is all used with lighting. If you take the face and every time they see half the face is missing, this is the bad guy, this is the guy that's, he's a monster. If you keep that consistent, every time they see that, that's what they will think. So their brain will automatically connect to that reality. And that's what you can use to your advantage. With the Terminalist, it's full of these different elements. It is such a masterfully shot and acted and lit and colored, all of this. But the biggest takeaway from this is that there is a lot of play that you can do with an entire series of episodes that are almost feature-length films in their own, where you can stay consistent and build a following and build a tone and build a theme that stays true through the entire thing. This is what you should be going for. When you're looking at your story, the one thing that you want to find out is, how can I create a flow? How can I make this film and this story take shape and morph into something extremely spectacular? Exactly what I'm thinking in my mind, or even better than what I'm thinking in my mind. And one of the main answers to this problem, or this question, is to use that lighting to your advantage. Every time you light something, every time you're setting a shot up, once you're looking at it, you should be thinking about the coloring. How are you going to color it afterwards? Then once you sit down afterwards, experiment with the colors. Use different colors, use different variety. See what different levels of brown that you can use that best fit the tone of that scene and that best fit the flow of the story. Terminalist is one of the best done with this, because every single scene, no matter how foreign the situation might be or how far away it might have been in the location of the story, it all feels in the same realm, in the same world. It all feels affected by the character, which is really, really detailed and expert storytelling. To use the lighting to also tell a story and to also confirm for the audience exactly what you want them to understand, which is this character is becoming something non-human, which is why we also become something non-human in watching this. the lighting changes shape and changes form. The darkness becomes something that he is able to now be free and is useful in the entire show for the rest of it, towards the grand finale, where it is an attack of darkness. If you notice, as they progress into the very ending of the scenes, it's all dark. But we've accepted it, and now we actually enjoy it, because now we, just like James Reese, can see in the dark. This was Terminallist, just a quick debriefing, if you want to get military about it, about the lighting and the coloring. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comments. If you have any films or any episodes, series, YouTube videos, something that you want questions answered about, whether it's lighting, anything that's honestly filmmaking, please send it in the comments, send a message, let us know. Follow us on dangerdogproductions.com. You can also get merchandise to help us create different movies and different things ourselves, so we can experiment and prove, that all this stuff that we're talking is actually pretty legit. So hit us up. This is The Film Business. I'm Zane Lucky Hampton, and Happy New Year's.